All right, so I'm going to start now. So I'm here today with Josh Blake. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about how we met before we kind of dive into the podcast. So I didn't actually know Josh until less than a week ago now.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of his LinkedIn posts, and we connected last Thursday, and I was just really impressed about you as a human, your background in visual merchandising, the things that you've done. Most impressed about the bit when you were talking about your team. So I'm really looking forward to kind of getting more into the leadership side during this conversation. Again, just to give a little bit of background on Josh. Josh has worked for some incredible retail brands in a visual merchandising capacity, including Mulberry, Burberry, Celine, Bottega, Tahari, to name but a few. But the bit that I really want to also delve into in this conversation is you've also gone through significant periods operating inside brands and outside brands in more of a consulting capacity. And I think it'd be very interesting for the audience to understand what both of those worlds looks like, the positives and the negatives. So that's something I want to kind of dive into. But before we go into anything else, I just want to welcome you to the podcast, Josh. And just to kind of ease us in, I want to start with some quick fire questions. See if you can answer these in under a minute or so, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty. But the first question that I want to put to you is, what's the weirdest thing you've ever used in a display?
Whew, the weirdest thing I've ever used in a display. Probably a fake cake, fake food, I think, in general.
Okay. In what context? Just in mixed with numerous outerwear pieces or any context?
Well, the whole concept was kind of tied back to the marketing campaign, which was a big holiday feast. So a whole table laid out with all kinds of crazy fake food. And even at the Fifth Avenue store, we did that inside the store as a huge kind of display. But then it carried over also, and all of the windows had this kind of element of layers of fake food and small trinkets and stuff that felt like this holiday display.
I think the most random thing I've done is spray paint a jumper on a life-size sheep. So that's probably up there with your food. We have to do some really weird things in the visual merchandising world. What's the dumbest thing someone's ever said to you about your job?
The dumbest thing. I mean, you get this one all the time, but I think when someone says, I'm not feeling this, when you're going through a walkthrough and there's no context and there's an expectation of change based on, I'm not feeling this. I think that's always strange in the visual merchandising world when you deal with those feelings.
Completely. I think those words kind of spread fear into the soul of any visual merchandising human being, because to your point, there's usually no context. There's usually no direction provided off the back of that. It's just this telling you that there's a feeling that they're experiencing, but there's absolutely no context. It's the hardest thing to kind of wade through, but it feels like there's a certain badge of honor when you've done that a number of times within visual merchandising. Do you see your role more as an artist, a problem solver, or a storyteller?
I used to think artist, but I think the more mature you get in visual merchandising and kind of keeping all the plates spinning, you're more of a problem solver at the end of the day. And I think what got me interested was the artist side of visual merchandising, but I think now it's definitely problem solving.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that one. And then the final quickfire question is, if you hadn't gone into visual merchandising, where do you think you would have ended up?
Tough to say. I went to school for illustration and painting. So I think maybe something more in the design world or, fine art painting, if I pursued that kind of more in depth than I did when I was initially out of school.
So you were always going to be a creative in some capacity?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, now we're going to get into the real stuff.
Okay.
So we're going to I really want to get an understanding of why visual merchandising, like why. It's always an interesting question to ask the guests, because especially when you're interviewing individuals of our kind of age, visual merchandising wasn't necessarily a thing at the very beginning of our careers from an educational perspective. But like, why the hell did you get into visual merchandising?
I got into visual merchandising. I worked in retail getting out of college. Actually, I think there's a lot of us out there that kind of start at the Gap or Banana Republic, something like that. You start in that kind of retail capacity, and you sort of, being a creative person and coming from a creative background in painting and all of that design concepts, you have an eye for it. And I think if I can go back in time and think about working at the Gap, I can remember this one specific time that really kind of maybe shaped a lot of what I would become. We were kind of tasked with doing a layout for the store. How do you set up the store during holiday to sell more, very specifically, men's underwear and like pajamas during the season? Well, I came up with this idea that we would, display those items in the bridge between women's and men's, so that there was a lot of overlap with women seeing all of that merchandise. And, obviously it's tied to the men's section as well. So it just gave it more exposure, even though from a corporate standpoint, they had kind of suggested that this product should be in the back of the store. But I kind of understood that if you get it in front of people in this area, it's going to sell more. And sure enough, we saw a huge increase in that holiday period in that specific merchandise. And when we're talking about problem solving, that's a problem, and it was solved, and we saw the success. So I think when you see these kind of successful things, the things that you see that maybe somebody else doesn't see, you start to understand, this is something that I can do that's really commercial, and that is a very necessary part to business. So it kind of pushed me in that direction. I think later on, working in luxury fashion, working with handbags, there's not a lot different between painting a painting and doing the concept of the design and the layout, to using handbags. It's all color, it's all balance, it's all contrast. So you're using these kind of ideas that you've kind of learned over time, and you're plugging it into a place where it really makes sense, and a place that can pay your bills. So it's exciting. Yeah.
Did you have anyone in those early days that really inspired you or kind of gave you the motivation to kind of stay within that? Like, everyone tends to have a person who helped them in their kind of visual merchandising trajectory. Like, who was that person for you?
I think for me, it was my old boss at Gucci, John Ercole. I think that our friendship really grew, and like he really helped me to believe in myself and like show me what I could do, and really grew from, working on one store to working on multiple doors, and really took me from that growth period. So like, I think of him a lot. Yeah.
What did he do that made a difference? How did he operate? How did he motivate you? What worked? I'm quite interested in understanding more about him as a leader.
Him as a leader, I think, you oftentimes talk about management styles. I think for John, he was very much like a friend. He really, if I wasn't successful, I wasn't letting down the brand, I was letting down John, because we had that friendship and like that kind of personal connection, and like hanging out outside of work, these kind of things that I didn't always see in all of my bosses along the way. I think we really built a kind of lasting friendship. And, I was later made redundant within that role, and he and other members of that team really pushed me to apply within the overarching group to another brand, and really helped me to do that. So yeah, I think that kind of connection, that kind of friendship is something that I sort of react to.
He sounds like an incredible human. He really does. Was there a moment along this journey where you felt like you truly belonged, or have you? Do you feel like you truly belong within this field?
Yeah, I think absolutely. There's been different times and different jobs that I've felt sort of like a belonging and a really necessary part of the team, and appreciated. But I think it's brand to brand. I think it's job to job, and I think that sometimes you feel like just a part of the machine pushing it forward, and maybe not appreciated. So I think it's a real. It's kind of finding that balance, or like understanding how you can belong. But yeah, it really depends on the brand for me.
We've had some conversations in the past about the situation that a lot of visual merchandisers are facing right now. Positions are being cut, departments are being downsized. How do you think that impacts on an individual's ability to really feel like they belong within a team when they're existing within this environment where they don't know if there's going to be a job in 6 months, 12 months time? It's a bit of a weird situation in retail at this moment.
Yeah, I would say that no one feels settled, and you don't feel settled as a boss. Like, you don't know what's the next step for your team. Are they going to be let go? So it's really hard to make these kind of relationships that maybe seemed a little easier to make in the past when things were a little bit more certain and, structure didn't change. So I think there is an uncertainty right now. It's not what I typically experience pre-pandemic.
How is there anything that you've done when you've been managing teams to kind of lead them through this uncertainty? Obviously, we've both, being in leadership roles, that you have to shoulder a lot of that responsibility and pressure. Is there anything that's happened in your past where you've helped kind of protect your team or shoulder that? And what is it when you're managing teams in this environment, what do you think is important to those teams in terms of managing them through that uncertainty?
Yeah, I think treating them honestly, like letting them know, like, this is the environment, like this is how we're moving forward. Training and developing them so that they are prepared if I'm gone, or, you know what I mean? There's a different way of nurturing people when you're in these environments that that, like, everything, you got to sort of level with people and let them know everything's going to be fine. It's just going to be different, or like it could be different, and just preparing for that type of change, I think.
We, off camera, when we spoke on Friday, like I said, one of the conversations we had that I was really impressed with you about, we were talking about the idea that when you're in these leadership roles, I think there's two types of leaders. There's the type of leader that during these challenging times, or any time, really puts the development of the team first and really tries to put themselves in a situation where they almost put themselves out of a job by getting their team so good. And then you have leaders that understand that there is risk around their roles, and they purposely keep their teams in check to ensure that they have that level of security. Like, where do you fit within that? What are your views on that?
I'm a leader that would never sort of protect myself by not training and developing my team. I think success is measured when you're a leader. Your success is measured by your entire team. So if your team's not functioning and your team can't take over for you, then you've kind of failed as a leader, right? So I would never sort of not nurture my team to grow and like understand the responsibilities and understand more responsibilities, to kind of protect myself by not making them competent.
Yeah. It's all. I think that is the sign of a great leader. If you're prepared to put yourself in a situation where your own security is at risk because you've done such an amazing job of getting your team to a point where they can function without you, then that is the ultimate achievement, I think, as a leader that maybe isn't recognized as much as it should be. I think that's an amazing thing.
Yeah, I think team development is such a huge part of being, a manager or a director, because we're in the business of problem solving and keeping the plates spinning. So if you can't rely on your team to help you do that, then you're not functioning as a team. So you're not really seeing that success. I think as you get older in your career, it's not about making one flagship store look pretty. It's about everything from the logistics of props to new store openings to everything that you need to kind of keep going. And that's how you measure your success, is look at the breadth of what we accomplished, and accomplished, let's say, on time or within budget. Like, that is true success. Like, opening a beautiful store is like, that's what I should be doing 10 years ago. Like, it's not what my focus is now, and it's not how I define success. And I don't think hiring managers or, bosses would look at me and be like, oh, you're really great at making stores look pretty. No, they want to see that I can manage a team and that I can keep the plates spinning.
Yeah. It's funny. I've worked with businesses where they've specifically hired a personality who has maybe had more of that creative ability, but not that team leadership side, just to have that person in place that has that uber level of creativity. But to your point, I honestly think you need someone in a leadership role that knows not only just knows how to lead people, but enjoys leading people, and that's quite a selfless thing. So it's a really tricky one. Another thing I'm interested in understanding about your journey, Josh, is I've definitely experienced that the older I've got, when it comes to my own personal behaviors and values, there's things now that early in my career I would have probably let, carried on that career trajectory and put certain things aside. But there's things now that if they don't align with my behaviors or values, I really just can't be in that environment. It just full stop. Like, how have you found as you've got older within your career, your approach to like your own personal behaviors and values?
I think when I was younger, especially in New York, and I think we can both talk about this because we both worked in New York and in the UK. I think when I was younger, it was work-life balance was not a thing. Like, you just kind of stayed as late as you needed to, did 16-hour days, worked weekends, whatever it was. And I think that was the expectation when I was younger. And I think you get a little bit more of that expectation in the United States than you do here. I think that as you get older, understanding that you can say no to things and in a professional way, and those things that you kind of learn over time, I think those pieces of integrity are important. And I think that, taking care of your team is definitely something that's part of my integrity.
DNA.
I think I don't want to see team members treated in like the devil will wear Prada kind of way.
Yes, yes. No, I've definitely seen that. But yeah, it's tough. The other thing I wanted to ask you was, when you think of the phrase "the display kid," which was obviously the inspiration for this podcast, and for me it was the derogatory term used to refer to visual merchandising. He's the person that makes things look pretty. I'm sure you've heard all of these things. What emotions or memories does that kind of conjure up when you hear the phrase "the display kid"?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think we see both sides of this coin. We get that kind of derogatory commentary, or like, oh, like, you don't get it, like, you're just VM, like, or whatever it is. But like, when you go into the meetings, like, the notes are all about VM. Like, it's like, this is the solution. VM is the solution to all of the problems. So like, to have this derogatory like language to the VM team when business is bad, we're the first ones you come to. So it's kind of this really strange.
It is
juxtapositioning.
from a buying and planning perspective, once the product's bought, it's bought. So to your point, when it comes to these trade meetings every week, it's always visual merchandising that's under the spotlight because it's the only thing that you can influence in terms of that store experience. And that does give us a certain amount of influence, but it also makes it quite tricky because it means that every single team has an opinion on visual merchandising that you have to kind of maneuver through. Some of those are warranted, some of them aren't. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we definitely face. Who inspired you most as a kid?
Who inspired me most as a kid?
And it doesn't have to be just related to VM. It just in a creative context. Like who really got you interested and kind of sparked your creativity?
It's tough to say.
Parents, friends.
Oh, I mean, my friends, sure. Like my high school buddies. Like we go back even to elementary school. I mean, we're all creatives. I mean,
yeah.
A lot of my friends are art school kids. So like, I would say at least 5 of my close friends from high school are art school kids, and then my college buddies obviously are all art school kids as well. So like, just constantly kind of talking about art, and like, it doesn't need to be. It's obviously not VM. Like I don't really have VM friends or old school VM friends. I have friends that I've made now.
Yeah.
But we talk about everything from music to paintings to film. It's just this constant kind of creative atmosphere that I'm kind of in with my close friends.
Yeah, no one wakes up, or no one's born with a passion for visual merchandising. Like you said, creativity comes in so many different forms: music, art, literature, so many different forms. And I think that from the individuals that I've kind of met on the podcast up to now, not one person has said that I am solely passionate about visual merchandising. It's usually one of the creative fields, and they've kind of fallen into this. I'm so glad that you found your group at such an early age. I didn't. I was the random kid in my local town who would go to charity shops and buy tailoring and paint stuff on the back of jackets. And most of my friends are either builders, contractors, a lot of tradesmen. So I was there, and I was very, very much in a different space, but incredible group of friends nonetheless. But I'm really glad you found your tribe. I definitely didn't. The next thing I want to kind of talk about is some of your career wins and learnings. So we're going to do 2 things. We're going to start by talking about some of your career wins and the learnings from that. Mm-hmm. And then I want to kind of pivot more onto the bit that I'm really interested in, which is the moments in your career where you've had to show resilience and some of the learnings that you've had from that. Because I think they're where you really learn the most about yourself. But I really want to start by talking about your career wins. And was there a moment, when was the last time that you, in your career, past or present, where you've thought, damn, I've nailed that. I've absolutely nailed that and created something that I'm really super proud of. Maybe the opinions of some of the external partners wasn't the same, but when was the moment you stepped back and were super proud of something that you'd done?
I think recently I worked with a brand and we were taking back the stores from franchise to freestanding within EMEA, specifically in Sweden. And this brand, over the last couple of years has been really struggling. The only place that they had an increase in was in Sweden, like 6% increase. They were about flat. This is when I left. They were about flat in the UK, but 6% increase in EMEA and kind of going backwards in Asia and going backwards in the US.
Yeah.
And that was, when I joined the group, that was the very specific conversation I had with the hiring manager and the head of merchandising, was that this is what we're doing in Sweden. We need to grow like this business. We need to get it under control. So yeah, I felt like that was a big, obviously it's not all of me, there's other aspects that come to increasing business in an area. But that increase was tied to, how we rolled out training, and like I rolled out a VMA program that was not in the group prior. So kind of training individuals to kind of merchandise the spaces. And yeah, just really went there once a month, went to Sweden once a month to do the floor set with these like store teams to explain like my way of thinking, how I thought. And I think that it was the only area that I kind of got that I started from scratch, and that really made me happy, and it made me feel like a success, because all the other areas that weren't performing are the ones that, I inherited. But like the one that I'd kind of built from scratch is the one that was performing. And so that felt like a pretty big success, I think, for me.
Wow. That's incredible. Was there a moment that you're particularly proud of that most people wouldn't even notice? So, sometimes there's things that you feel in yourself, but they're not necessarily metrics that you're delivering to a business. Or, is there something that you're really proud of that maybe isn't as easy to quantitatively measure?
I think there was a time that I was made redundant in my career, and this goes back to my friend John helping me. But I got a payout, and at the time, I had only been with the group for 2 years, so the payout was not a lot. It was like a few months.
Yeah.
I managed to get rehired by the same group in a different brand before I even got through that like payout. So like that sort of like dusting yourself off, being like, all right, I need to move on to the next thing, and I need to interview for this next position within the group. And like, I have some like friends and partners that are going to help me with this, but like, I need to build my portfolio. And this is like early in my career. This is like my first luxury brand I was made redundant at. But yeah, then hired a month later with like a 3-month payout. So I got like paid double for 2 months. Like I felt pretty excited about that.
That's pretty special.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have a story around this, but I'm really interested in can you talk about one of your team, in your past, who you've been super proud of their progression and the part that you played in that? Everyone has that one person. Like, who is that person that you feel like you were able to kind of support in their journey, and they're going on and absolutely killing it right now?
My direct report from Burberry, when I had started, she's one of the people that I hired. I took her from being a VMA, a visual merchandising ambassador, to a visual merchandiser. And when I was made redundant, they sort of offered her a promotion to become the visual merchandiser so she was in Boston, and then she, moved to LA. And I remember having a very specific conversation with her as I was on my way out. Like, listen, you can't, Boston isn't a thing anymore. They're going to make that position redundant. You know that, like, this is your option. You can go to LA, you can go to Miami. I'd say go to LA. Like, that's like the next best location other than New York. So she kind of went with it. And I think she's like a director at like Fendi now or something. Like, I mean, she's just progressed so quickly from a merchandiser to a manager to a director. So I was really excited for her journey, but at the same time, she was so talented. It's tough to take any credit. Like, she's just like one of those people that's just such a go-getter. But like, we did have some conversations along the way that I was like, wow, this is pretty exciting for you. I'm like, yeah.
One of my, probably the bit that I'm most proud of personally is where I've left teams and I still have key people that I was close to within the teams calling me up for advice or even just a chat. That is the thing that makes me most happy now when I've kind of moved on from a role, because you kind of move on from a role, but I don't think you ever really move on from the people. There's always key people within brands, and I think one of the things I'm really proud of, even with the agency that I have now, I've managed to hire back some of the people who have been working in big corporate brands to come and join a tiny little startup business with me. That's something that I'm really proud of. But like you said, I think I'm sure she remembers you, and they're the things that really matter, not the external praise. It's seeing people in your team go on and absolutely kick ass. So the other thing, when we were off camera, like I said, we spoke about the training teams and the way that potentially leaves you feeling vulnerable. I think that's the fact that you appreciate that is an amazing thing. I want to kind of move now on to the bit that I'm really interested in, and I think that you'll be able to provide a lot of insight into for a lot of individuals here, and that is the difference between working within a corporate background and working within more of a consulting, self-employed background. Maybe you could start by just kind of summarizing some of the benefits of both and some of the challenges of both, just to give individuals a bit more context on that.
Absolutely. I think there's been times that I've been very successful as a consultant after coming out of like other brands, and sometimes I'm not. I think the tough thing about consulting and freelance work is just it's very feast or famine. There's like sometimes when all the money's rolling in and you're like, this is great, I could do this forever. And then you've got 2 months and no work. I think personally, my mentality, like I typically lean to want a more like full-time job. So like even now that I'm doing consulting, I'm still looking for contract work that's like a set amount of months, not just project based. But yeah, I think the great thing is the freedom about it, and like not having to be tied up in all these conversations with like the interdepartment conversations with like clienteling and marketing and everything that goes on with like being a VM at like a corporate kind of level. You're there to do one thing, and like you're not sitting in 45 different meetings. That's really refreshing, I think, sometimes. Not to say that I think definitely other times in corporate environments, you do appreciate that kind of interdepartment kind of balance, but sometimes it can get tedious. So yeah, I mean, I think the freedom to kind of say, I don't want to take that contract, or, I'm going to take a few weeks off at any given time. As a consultant, you can kind of do that, and you can kind of make your own rules and your own schedule in that kind of way. But there's definitely an uncertainty that comes with consulting. I can remember, I've done a lot of consulting jobs with brands that don't have any visual team at all. So you kind of go in there, you're setting up the showroom, you're buying all the showroom props, you're setting up all the lighting, you're doing absolutely everything soup to nuts, like setting up a showroom for a place that doesn't have that, or making directives for a brand that doesn't have that. I think I worked with a brand, Rami Brook, in New York, which is like kind of an East Hampton-y kind of ladies luxury, ready-to-wear brand. And what does the color stories look like for the season and that kind of stuff. So that can be really fun and exciting because you're building things from scratch and you're doing a whole like soup to nuts kind of thing, and it's a big project. And other times I've just done store openings, like because they don't have enough, team members.
Resource.
Yeah. I think there was a time Tom Ford was between visual merchandising directors, and they were opening a flagship location. So like I kind of helped out with that and like managed a couple of freelancers to kind of roll out the visual merchandising there. So yeah, I mean, I think it's tough to say because I think also you have this like idea that, like working for a brand is such a secure job. But I mean,
It really isn't.
I'm in VM. I've gotten made redundant 3
Yeah.
times in my
Yeah.
career since 2007. So you kind of tell yourself, oh, it's a little bit more.
But it isn't
and
necessarily.
it isn't necessarily. And
I'm so like one of the reason we're kind of sat here today was we had that 30-minute conversation on the phone, and I was so impressed at your. I could already tell you that you've got you've got a positive approach, mental approach to these things. I left corporate a couple of years ago, didn't have anything lined up, wanted to come back to the UK and figure it out. After 2-3 months of just giving myself time to kind of heal and kind of recover and be ready to go again, I had so much anxiety. I'd never experienced anxiety or stress, or luckily I had enough kind of runway to go for a few more months, but I've never experienced that before. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever had in my career, bar none. Remember sitting up, going to bed at night, not being able to sleep, not being able to turn the brain off. I'm really interested in getting to know that side with you, because I've always had this feeling that I always approach things from a very positive standpoint. I always take ownership for everything myself. I think you need to keep that ownership. Otherwise, if you're blaming situations or environments or people, you're just taking all of the power away from yourself. But that time when you're in between work, it's really fucking scary. Scary. Like, how have you mentally dealt with that on numerous occasions? And because you've got an amazing positive approach, attitude to these things, but it's so hard.
let's see. It was really easy to stay positive when I was made redundant the first time, and I got rehired within a month.
Yeah. Yes.
Very easy to stay
When
positive.
you've got 2 extra months paycheck.
Two extra months. I think there was a time after I left Celine, and I left Celine with no safety net.
Yeah.
I say no safety net, but no job lined up.
Yeah.
As they say. And I only was relying on freelance. And I remember at that time, it started off really great because I had all these connections, and people were impressed of where I had just come from. So I had a lot of work lined up. And I would say after the first year or so, it was okay, it's starting to dry up. It's not like it was before. There used to be a lot of pop-ups in New York, and everyone was doing fun activations and stuff like that. But yeah, it was like I could only get work around certain times of year, holiday or fashion week or whatever it is. So yeah, it did start to kind of dry up. And I think it's just keeping that open mind and being and also realizing all right, this isn't working. This consulting thing, it's not a good time to be a consultant right now. Maybe I should look and see what the next job is. So you just have to be nimble, and you have to kind of realize that if you're running on fumes, it's time to kind of renegotiate what you're doing. I would say right now I'm definitely underemployed after being made redundant. And yeah, just looking for the next contract to kind of get you through.
I remember someone who's a really good friend now, who again was a VP of retail, and she was made redundant during COVID, and she'd been, so many people were affected by COVID, and she had enough runway to go for the first 6-8 months. So she was fine. Then the anxiety started to come in, but she was so worn down by the retail side of the business. She did something that I have so much respect for this individual for doing. Like this person decided that they just wanted to get that love for retail back. So this is someone who is a VP level, decided to kind of take more of a store-based role, more of an anonymous store-based role. And just to get that love back, just to get back in the game. Obviously, very quickly, she got moved into store manager, area manager, and before you know it, she was back to where she was. But her approach was it's just amazing to me that someone can be that humble. And I think that's another thing that's important within this. It's I think when you're young, you're so fixated on getting higher and higher and higher. And if there's any situation where you might have to take a sidestep, it's something that you think is the worst thing ever, but it can really end up being the best thing that you end up doing as opposed to the worst thing.
Yeah.
We're going to work together. I just know that, by the way. Might cut that out, but I just get a feeling you and I are going to work together. I can just tell already.
I think when you were saying, like, you know, I think what's difficult as you get more senior as a visual merchandiser is this, like, if you apply to like something lower, like people are just like, oh, you're going to jump ship, so we're not going to hire you. So it's really funny to like sometimes think like, even if you want to take a step back, you have to have that really nuanced conversation to why you're taking that step back, because, you know, people are like, well, you're the manager of like 3 countries and now you want to be a manager for just the London area. So yeah, these kind of conversations are so strange and need to be so nuanced.
God. Yeah. It's, so much going on. Yes. What I really want to understand is, for someone that's starting out now in visual merchandising, like any profession, is uber competitive right now. Is there any advice that you would give to younger Josh, or as to what to do or what to focus on or what to think? What advice would you give your younger self?
What advice I would give my younger self? Don't say yes to everything. Set boundaries. I think my younger self was really bad at setting boundaries, and I think I ended up in positions where I was doing way too much. And like, I can remember this one time very specifically that, I was working on the East Coast for this luxury brand. Maybe you can figure it out through my LinkedIn. And I had a partner who was recently hired on the West Coast.
Yeah.
And he was going to be taking over for me because I was leaving this position, and I was based in New York and he was based in LA. And he and I are still friends to this day. And he like took the role, and like, he kind of found out what my schedule was and how I managed my region. And like, I was visually merchandising personally, a Soho flagship, a Madison flagship, Barney's, and Bergdorf in the first 3 days of the week, all of that, and then traveling after that. And when he took over for me, he was like, that's not doable. And like, he didn't do it. And, he really like set the boundaries. And I think that like my younger self is the this kind of martyr that's like, I can do it. I can stay for 12 hours and I can get it done and I can do all these stores, and you just burn yourself out. So I think that's a big one, protecting yourself and saying no when you can say no.
Wow. That's amazing. That's a really good one. Has there ever been a situation in your career where you've almost self-sabotaged by overthinking and a situation where you maybe didn't need to, or is that something that you think is maybe a commonplace thing within visual merchandising? We're all creatives. We're trying to figure out what every single stakeholder is going to have a view on a certain thing, or what they're going to think. But kind of, what's your view on the concept of self-sabotaging within our realm of business?
Yeah, I think there's definitely those instances, and there's definitely those instances where you want to solve everyone's problem, right? So you want to like come up with solutions that no one's asked for yet. And coming up with solutions that no one's asked for yet is standard self-sabotage, because like you've already put yourself on the line to do this thing. So like, oh, I can go to York and do the store, like redo it. Like we just need to get the product there. No problem. I can do it personally. And like you realize it doesn't fit into your schedule, and you've just like offered yourself up for something that no one's even asking for. So that's like classically something that I do, is like I offer solutions that like no one wants the solution. Like
Yes. Yeah. You're suggesting something that someone hasn't even asked for and doesn't even want. Typical visual merchandiser behavior. You put a post up on LinkedIn that I really kind of connected with, and it was the idea of real CVs behind luxury fashion careers. And this resume is not necessarily being a true reflection of the role or even a true reflection of you as an individual. I'm wondering if you could maybe give a bit of context around that, because anyone who's applying for jobs or moving jobs, I think this idea that you kind of covered in that post was quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to kind of start that conversation, and honestly, no one else had a conversation with me about it, so it's good to have the conversation.
Yes.
But yeah, I just wanted to have that conversation because I think that there's so many people, you know, they get made redundant, and then like they're like, oh, well, I've never worked in beauty before, but it's the only thing that's out there, so I'm going to do that. Like, I had trouble when I first got to the UK, like finding a luxury brand that, you know, wanted to work with me. Maybe they didn't understand my background as an American, like, but I mean, I'm managing huge accounts, you know, I'm managing Chicago, Miami, Boston. And like, I come here and I can't even manage just London.
And most of these states are bigger than the UK.
Yeah. So like all these kind of things, like, oh, how do I make my resume make sense in that kind of capacity? And then like, oh, well, I can get this role. I can do a design role with a beauty brand. So like, I'll do that. But then the next time you're interviewing for a luxury brand, they're like, well, why'd you go to beauty? Like, and obviously they're not having this conversation with me. They're like, it's HR, like looking at my resume for 2 seconds and then checking it out.
Yeah.
Like, why that shift? Why did you like, and then like even sort of my resume looks like it has about almost a year gap. But like in that year, I was made redundant at Burberry during the pandemic. I got paid out for about 6 months, and I was trying to figure out what's the next step. How do I get to London? Because my partner had moved to London. So I was in the New York, made redundant, paid out for 6 months, had to figure out a visa situation, because I think people come to the United States, they can get sponsorship from a brand. That really doesn't happen here. Like I've never had anyone be like, oh yeah, we'll sponsor you for your like work visa.
Yeah.
Like, so you have to have like a work visa. So like that took 6 months to process. So like, yeah, it looks like I haven't been doing anything for a year, but like I had to go through this process of like getting to London, like, which was a job in itself.
Yeah. It's like someone from HR is looking at a resume and to your point, they're seeing that gap and they're seeing it as a red flag. But in fact, it was you doing all of the necessary work needed to be able to be successful when you're over here. But it's very easy for someone to look at that on a piece of paper and not get that. And it scares me now that like agencies and brands are putting CVs through these systems to look for keywords, etc., to kind of screen individuals. I'm old school. I'd love to know about some of your hires or recruits, but some of the best people that I've ever hired in a visual merchandising capacity have been people that just looked awful on paper, and they've gone on to be the best individuals that I've ever hired. I hired one individual who works for me now, when I was at a previous brand in the US. I only worked for one brand in the US, so again, you can probably figure that out from my resume. And she was recommended to me by another VP, and she was operating in a PA capacity, but she had been responsible for organizing all of the like sample sales. She had her own brand, and she wanted to get into visual merchandising, but couldn't get a break. And she was leaving the brand to try and find a VM job. And the VP told me, you need to just meet her and see what you think. I met her in Bryant Park and had a coffee. And in 30 minutes, I was convinced I had to hire her. She had no formal visual experience. She went on to be responsible with another one of my team for one of the key areas of the business, which was collection, which reported directly into the founder. And she went on to be an area VM for another brand, and then came back to me and said, I want to come and work with you, and I hired her back. Incredible. Like, have you had anyone like that? Like, have you had anyone who was maybe not good on paper but turned out to be an amazing hire?
Not really. I really can't say that I've had the experience because I think, but I've done a lot of the hires that I've done were people who were already in the brand and already showed a passion for visual merchandising. So I've hired a lot of people. I would say 2 people that I hired that went on to be pretty successful. Sorry, I'll say that again.
Yeah.
2 people that I went on to hire that went on to be pretty successful. Were basically like from the sales associate level that just showed a passion for VM. So like, I think now, like, there's so many, you know, when I'm talking with, like, I had like a boss at Mulberry or whatever that would be part of the hiring process with me, you know, that people are looking for like visual merchandising college programs. And like, that's like, that wasn't a thing when I was hired. I don't expect that from people that I hire. So yeah, I've seen multiple like sales associates go from a sales associate to like VMA to merchandiser, and like have a path that's just kind of starting out. Like, so I've seen that type of success.
Yeah, it's special when you get those moments. I want to just take a moment of reflection and ask you a couple of questions, just to kind of round this off, which is, the first one I want to kind of ask you is, what does success in visual merchandising look like to you?
So success in visual merchandising to me now is really the 2 things that I think we keep saying a lot: problem solving and keeping the plate spinning. Those are the success. That's how you measure success. And that means a lot of things. That means stores are beautiful. That means the directives are on time and they're beautiful. Like, the overarching thing is like keeping all the plates spinning. That's success in visual merchandising. And there's so many things that we do. Sometimes it's even events. It's showrooms, it's stores, it's directives, it's seasonal directives. It's the update to the seasonal directive because the original seasonal directive didn't work. Like, you know, it's all the things that come at you. So all the problem solving with that at the same time is keeping those plates spinning. And that's success. But there's also, like we've been talking about all day, is like the success of functional teams that work well together. And in my experience, that's a huge piece of the puzzle.
Great answer. What's something you used to value within your profession that holds no meaning for you professionally now? So maybe something that was at the beginning of your career that was really, really important to you, and
Oh, maybe like the clothing allowance. Like now I'm like, I don't know, cool, another bag. Like
yeah.
That's kind of maybe not the answer you're exactly looking for.
No, I love that. That's the perfect answer. It's not deep, but it's true. If you could give your younger display kid self one piece of advice, what would it be? This is the last question. Kind of similar to what we asked before, but I want to ask it one more time.
Don't take it too seriously. It's just rags and leather. At the end of the day, like when we're talking about apparel and handbags, it's like, you're not curing cancer. Like, it seems important. Like, it's not vastly important. And it just happens to be what the job's about.
That is perfect.
Where are you right now? Like, how do you feel like about going on your own and everything that's happened?
I feel very fortunate in as much as I honestly do believe everything happens for a reason. I believe that the energy that you put out is the energy that you get back. You don't necessarily get what you want when you want it, but the universe is there and will give you what you need. And I did 2 years in New York and really enjoyed my time there, but I wanted to come home. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I needed a break. I met an incredible human who was one of my vendors when I was working in my previous job, and kind of built a friendship. And he is now my co-founder in this. So how do I feel right now? Very honest. When I left the corporate, I'd been working in corporate until the age of 41. I'm someone that has always been fortunate enough that I've managed to keep in roles. So I've never had to work that muscle that you did, which was that kind of really building up that level of resilience. I think I had a certain amount of arrogance that I had it. And when I finally came back and realized that I wasn't needed, I had a massive kind of crisis moment in myself. I've been fortunate enough with CX Story that I didn't even know what consulting was. I had 6 months in, a friend who used to have a senior role at a previous business came to me and said, would you be interested in a consulting role for a brand? Didn't even know how much to charge, what it was about, didn't even know what consulting was, and kind of just had to find my way. But I'm, in a weird way, because brands are going through this moment now where they're cutting back, but visual merchandising as a function is still needed. It's created this opportunity for an agency that can do the full concept through to execution, everything. So I wanted to kind of set up an agency that could work on various levels. The first level was working with visual teams at a foundational level. I'm super passionate about building high performance teams, coaching, leadership, that side, strategy. Then I used to have a team in corporate that did more of the creation. So design, I had a design team that would do all of the Windows pop-ups events. And then I had a comms team that would do all of the directives and the guidelines. And then I had a field team, global field team, that would roll out the concepts. So all we really effectively did was build an agency that was able to offer all of these functions to a brand and then plug and play. But yeah, how do I feel? Super grateful at how the last 12 months has organically gone. But the first 6 months of leaving a brand, I've never experienced that level of like stress or like crisis of character that, you know, I didn't realize I had a coach that was working with me during this period, and she helped me realize that my own identity was tied to being needed. seriously, like she helped me through the process, and I realized that I'd built a career and got a lot of enjoyment out of being needed. So when that disappeared, I had this huge gap of people not calling me, and I didn't know what to do. It was very weird, but that was what it was.
Okay. You feel like
You're
but
like, I've just been interviewed by this complete fucked up mess of a human.
no, I mean, I think you're getting to where like the dust is starting to settle, I think, for you.
Yes.
And like,
yeah.
and you had sort of a moment, but like,
Yeah.
now you're back, and like,
Yeah.
you're figuring out the next steps. I think that's really exciting.
Yeah.
It's interesting. How do you think having a baby is going to affect your sort of VM life?
That's a really good question. I always wanted to have kids, but I always had this idea in my head that I'd need to have a certain amount of money in the bank, that I would have to be at a certain point in my career. You'd have to unpick all of my. We all have childhood traumas, but that need for that security was something that was in me. Ironically, the year that I have a child is the year that I started a business from scratch, had no income, got married, had to pay for a wedding, and it's all fine, and I've realized that all of those obstacles that I was putting in the way, all those things were just you figure it out. And I love this little human to bits. He's 16 weeks old. He's got such a personality already, and it's almost given me even more energy in myself to succeed. Like I always had it in me before, but now there's like this extra layer that it just gives you even more like firepower or motivation just to make sure that you get shit done. The other thing that's maybe different is if I'm doing trips now, to your point, I'm really thinking about do I need to be away for 5 days? Could I go for 3? Could I bring my wife and bring my son and tag on a couple of days and make it more of a thing? So it's definitely different now, kind of factoring in a family. But honestly, when you make that decision to do that, I can't tell you how amazing it is. Everyone, when you speak to someone that's just had a child, or someone that had a child for, had children for a while, it's, you're going to lose your independence, you're going to lose your this, you're going to lose that. I'm really happy with everything that I've lost. I really am. Because you gain so much more, and life's just so much better. It really is. Like, yes, you have to stay up during the nights, but equally, because I'm working in the day, the night shift is when I get to spend time with him. So I get to like feed him and stuff. So it's going to be the best thing that happens to you. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me. It really is.
Exciting.
There he is. Oh no, I turned my phone off because I was told to turn my phone off. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll edit it in.
I think that's a really interesting part. I think maybe the timing's perfect because you have this like oomph and you have this like drive to succeed that's even amplified, perhaps.
Yeah. We had this discussion off camera, but honestly, if someone could have given me the advice again, there's just never a good time. Then there really isn't. And so many people told me that, and I was like, yeah, there kind of is a good time. And I was convinced that there was, but they were so right. There's never a good time. And yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
So I'm going to use your question.
Yeah.
What would you tell your younger self?
Ooh. I'm kind of glad that I pushed as hard as I did when when I was younger. But another thing that I had to deal with when I had that moment when I wasn't working was and maybe you can relate to this, I would tell my younger self, don't try not to connect your self-worth with your work. And for me, my own self-worth was so tied up with me as a work entity. So when that me as a work entity was gone, that was where this crisis of, this is where it all kind of started to unravel for me, because I didn't have I felt like I'd lost my identity and I had to kind of get it back. So I would tell my younger self, don't feel like you as a work entity is the only thing. Because the thing that kind of pulled me through that moment was the people that really matter to you don't see you as a work entity. And being surrounded by those individuals, family, friends, they don't give a shit if you're, if you're not working, or they things like that. Just it's not you as a human. I think that would be the thing. I probably wouldn't listen to myself if I'm honest, but I would tell myself, try not to get tied up with your work entity and self-worth, because once you do that, it can be really destructive, I think.
Yeah, I think that ties back to like my conversation that I was having about resume. I think there's been times I'm like beating myself up because like, oh, that's not the perfect brand. Like, or, like when I was at this brand, I was cooler or happier, or like I mattered more. And that tying yourself to your work in that way is just, it's so dangerous, because when there are the slumps, when you are like, oh, I'm between contracts for now 3 months, like, you start beating yourself up because you've tied that value to a portion of you that, like you said, the people who love you most don't really care.
Yeah. I think that's a really great way to end, I think. Yeah, that was a great question. I'm glad you asked me that.